It is unfortunate when we figure out an actor has lost their life. What is even worse is at times it happens right before production on a film is complete. These days we are graced with an abundance of technology where actors can easily be replaced. This wasn't always the case when movies came out in the past. Here's a list we have compiled for you. For those of you who love ad-free viewing and free things, we're excited to announce the Premium Network. The Premium gets you early access to videos from Screen Rant, CBR, The Gamer, and many other great channels. Literally thousands of videos in one place with ad-free browsing. How sweet is that? Sign up for free at The Premium by clicking the link to start binge-watching videos from your favorite channels. Don't forget to hit that red subscribe button below and join our notification squad to stay up to date with similar content. Can you guess the feature film from these emojis? Find out shortly following this video.
No, listen to me. No one else can do this but her.
Philip Seymour Hoffman as Plutarch HEAVENSBEE. Philip Seymour Hoffman died in February 2014 with about a week left of production in The Hunger Games: Mockingjay. This included a major emotional scene for his character Plutarch HEAVENSBEE. The actor was actually scheduled to film the day after his death. After a brief shutdown, director Francis Lawrence said production half-heartedly resumed. After Hoffman's death, there was a change to the shooting schedule, allowing for shorter days so the cast could mourn the death of the Oscar-winning actor. A small amount of digital work using existing footage was used to disguise his absence. There was no digital manipulation or computer-generated fabrication of any kind. In the film's conclusion, there was supposed to be a memorable scene between HEAVENSBEE and the film's protagonist, Katniss Everdeen, where HEAVENSBEE offers parting wisdom. The script was rewritten and the wisdom given was in the form of a letter read by Woody Harrelson's character. Now, while it may have been different from Suzanne Collins' book and a slightly awkward solution, it carried something special for the cast and crew of the films. Lawrence said it added an extra layer of emotion to the experience. How many of you were saddened at the news of Hoffman's death so close to finishing this movie?
We've heard word of rumors circulating through the city.
Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin. Back in the day, Peter Cushing was known for his role as vampire hunter Van Helsing and Victor Frankenstein. For all you Star Wars nerds out there, you know him better as Grand Moff Tarkin, the commander of the Death Star, first appearing in Star Wars: A New Hope. In Rogue One, a Star Wars story, you most likely remember seeing him again. Since Rogue One took place directly before, episode director Gareth Edwards thought it to be unthinkable and narratively implausible not to include Tarkin. His cinematic rebirth took place more than 20 years since his death. When the originally Star Wars was released, Cushing was already in his 50s. When Edwards and others were discussing what to do with certain characters, there was a lot up in the air. They needed to decide if they would cast someone that looks like them, not put them in the movie, or just hear about them. Visual effects supervisor John Knoll was confident in what he could do, so they went all in to digitally recreate the characters. Actor Guy Henry, with a facial structure similar to that of Cushing's, was tasked with performing necessary lines and gestures. They then used motion capture technology to take in his facial expressions and movements. They then turned those into Cushing's. Were you expecting to see Grand Moff Tarkin's reappearance?
3 days, great day when you are here.
Oliver Reed as Proximo. Action, great special effects, suspense. Ridley Scott's Gladiator had it all. However, something tragic happened during filming. Oliver Reed passed away from a heart attack during the filming of Gladiator. What's worse was the actor hadn't finished all of his scenes. It is probably the most famous digital fix in the movie. Director Ridley Scott was now in a bit of a predicament. Proximo was a major character and needed him in the climax of the film. He worked with British visual effects company The Mill for the computer-generated imagery. They created a digital body double for Reed's remaining scenes. It was reported Scott had a CG version of Reed's face digitally pasted onto a stand-in post-production at a reported cost of $3.2 million for 2 minutes of screen time. All that money seemed to have paid off, as Gladiator has proved to be one of the biggest critical and commercial successes. It won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Russell Crowe, and Scott was nominated for Best Director. The film was also named the 5th best action film of all time in the ABC special Best in Film: The Greatest Movies of Our Time. Gladiator ended up being dedicated to Oliver Reed. Laurence Olivier as Dr. TOTENKOPF. The 2004 movie Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow brought back an actor who had died in 1989 at the age of 82. The man was Sir Laurence Olivier playing a holographic villain named Dr. TOTENKOPF. Producer John Avnet wanted to bring back Olivier because at the time he hadn't seen Olivier in any movies recently. He thought it was pretty cool casting and he thought he was a great actor. Avnet also suggested that Olivier was put in the film as a nod to film's deliberate retro aesthetic, as it is set in an alternate version of 1939. Another speculated decision to bring him back was that Jude Law, the star of the film, admired the infamous actor. Back in 2004, the visual effects industry was unable to create what they were able to do these days, like in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and Furious 7. To create Olivier, they didn't take footage from films, but rather more obscure snippets such as BBC interviews where he's seated and didn't move around as much. Motion capture and other similar techniques used in later movies were also used to manipulate the Olivier's image. The filmmakers were granted permission to bring back the late actor by the Olivier estate.
You do not remember me.
Marlon Brando as JOR-EL. Director Bryan Singer tried to relaunch the franchise with a new actor playing the Man of Steel. He wanted to use the same JOR-EL, Superman's father, played by Marlon Brando. Unfortunately, Brando passed away in July 2004, 8 months before filming began. VFX warehouse Rhythm and Hughes stitched together old footage from Superman the movie from 1978 and a little CGI. First, they would find a clip where his eyes would match new dialogue. They then created a computerized model of him from photogenic reference. The model was then used to track and match selected footage. This led to project footage onto tracked model. To make Brando seem more realistic, the hair was touched up as well as his face using hand paint in the software. They then added textures to the mouth to better enhance the movement. This made sure the mouth moved in relation to what the character was saying. The final stage was viewing the animation from multiple angles to make sure it was all in sync. Brando's newly computer-generated would then be placed inside a crystal where he is discovered in the movie. There was a lot of hype surrounding the movie, but unfortunately left a lot of fans disappointed.
Take your shot, fun boy.
Brandon Lee as Eric. When Brandon Lee died on the set of The Crow, it inadvertently helped usher in a new era of computer technology. Brandon, the son of Bruce Lee, passed away after the film's prop master used a gun that was loaded with real bullets. People were predicting the film would catapult him to stardom, but no one would have guessed he was going to die so tragically, or that his death and resurrection would wind up being the defining point in the film. Lee plays Eric, a man who was murdered along with his wife. A year later, he rises from the dead, puts on some face paint, and is ready for revenge. The film hasn't exactly aged gracefully, but Dream Quest's then groundbreaking use of CGI to finish Lee's remaining scenes remains impressive. It cost around $8 million and somewhere between 550 to 650 hours of work for around 30 seconds of film. The most laborious task was the shot of Eric staggering back to the apartment a year later, which was digitally lifted from an unused alleyway sequence and was superimposed on an empty hallway shot. They essentially had to resurrect Lee to make the sequence work. All of this technology were precursors to what they were able to do in later films. Roy Schneider as Joseph. Roy Schneider gave one of his best on-screen performances in Jaws, released in 1975, playing the role of Chief Brody. It was a perfect performance in a movie full of perfect performances. Unfortunately, his final film, Iron Cross, was quickly forgotten. He gave a determined performance as a cop hunting Nazis in a thriller that takes a lot from much better, older films. Unfortunately, Schneider had died with one crucial scene left to film. The filmmaker's unique answer was to build a prosthetic latex mask thanks to Louis Lazara. The mask was made based on Schneider's distinctive features. It was used along with CGI to bring the actor back to life for one last performance. Joshua Newton, the director, stated that Schneider had been extremely passionate about the project, and the two became very close during filming. He believed Roy was one of the most talented and acclaimed actors of his generation. His versatility set him apart and made him the obvious choice to play such a troubled, complex character, Newton said. Schneider was also a perfect fit for the role as he had portrayed tough cops in before, like in Jaws and The French Connection. The twice-nominated Oscar will always be Chief Brody in our hearts. Bruce Lee, The Game of Death. 5 years after the death of Bruce Lee, Robert Klaus, who directed Lee's masterpiece, Enter the Dragon, was hired to finish the 1972 film Game of Death, which Lee had shot around 100 minutes of footage before production was put to a halt. Klaus had to splice shots of Lee into new scenes and created a bizarre movie that made no sense. Ultimately, there is less than 12 minutes of Lee's original footage. While Klaus was a good filmmaker and there were numerous Oscar nominees included in the cast, the stunt doubles who were used to play Lee are painful to watch. The worst instance involves a cardboard cutout of Lee's face being taped to a mirror while a double sits in front of a mirror, hiding behind the mask. It would be funny if it wasn't creepy. Had Lee not died, the original film may have been another classic, especially if the end fight scene Bruce Lee envisioned had taken place. The making of the movie was an admirable attempt to make some money off of the recently deceased kung fu legend. They even filmed Lee's funeral to make the story fit into what already existed. It is a shame that Lee passed away and the film wasn't as good as it could have been. John Candy as James Harlow. Peter Markle's atrocious Western comedy, Wagons East, was the last film notorious funny guy John Candy filmed. He unfortunately passed away on set in Mexico from a heart attack in 1994. Candy plays a grizzled wagon master with a penchant for crude jokes. The film is set in the 1860s when a ragged bunch of misfit settlers decide they can't live in their current situation, so they hire a cowboy to take them back to their homes. Most of the scenes that Candy were left to shoot were either scrapped or rewritten to exclude him. One exception, and one scene which is now infamously remembered, features a lazy cut-and-pasted shot of Candy from an earlier scene now superimposed over a new background. It makes no sense, looks awful, and is not even the worst scene in the movie. There was one other scene that Candy needed to be in and had to use special effects to do so. It involved digitally moving the actor from one scene to another. Candy was one of Canada's greatest and funniest character actors. Although his career handed him some dry spells, he always rebounded. He was generally cast as the big-hearted goof and was adored by many. Paul Walker as Brian O'Connor. It saddened a lot of the world when actor Paul Walker, infamous for his role as Brian O'Connor in the Fast and Furious movies, passed away in 2013. He wasn't just a lover of fast cars in the movies, but real life as well. If you didn't hear the story, Walker unfortunately crashed his Porsche and passed away. R.I.P. Paul. Luckily, with the help of technology, the studio was able to bring him back to life for Fast and Furious 7, which was released in 2015. In the pre-digital era, it would have made finishing a movie a daunting task. Visual effects artists, with the help of Walker's two brothers, Caleb and Cody, created 350 shots to keep him on the screen. Caleb and Cody were scanned and then were put in the scenes, which gave them something resembling Paul, which they could work with. They then computer-generated Walker's head, and in other scenes, a third actor also stood in for Paul. To animate the simulated performances, the team used a lot of Paul's footage as reference because while the brothers resembled him physically, his mannerisms and style were different. There wasn't any room to slip in this movie as it was too important to complete the story to respect Paul's memory. Isn't it a shame that some of these actors died right before their films were completed? Before I forget, the answer to the movie emoji is… well, did you guess correctly? Be sure to leave your comments below. If you haven't done so already, check out our playlist as well. Thank you for watching our video.